Hey, good evening. Thank you all for coming to the Washington Bird Nature Alliance's first program in this space. I want to start by thanking the Ann Arbor District Library team and staff. This is an exciting move for us. We've long loved being at Matai Botanical Gardens for our programs, but audiovisually, it was challenging. It's also a little challenging from an access standpoint for some of our members. And so to be right here in the middle of Ann Arbor and to have this extraordinary screen where we can start to share images by really accomplished photographers and nature lovers is thrilling for us. So thanks for joining us. I'm standing up here because Juliet Berger, our president and fearless leader, is actually out of town and birding in Texas right now. So she asked me to step in briefly. I'm Keith Dickey, the treasurer for Washington Bird and Nature Alliance. I'm going to point to a few of our other board members. Jessica Domchuk is our secretary. Let's see, Matt. Oh, where's Matt? Matt is our field trip chair. Yako is our newsletter editor and master of all things Christmas bird count. And Diana is our membership chair. She's out there as well. I think that's probably the bulk of the group for today. Let's see here. First, as we always do, I want to just start by reading a portion of our D&I statement. And you can find the full statement on our website, but the Washington Bird and Nature Alliance pledges to protect differing color, size, behavior, geographical preference, and countless other ways. As we honor and celebrate the equally remarkable diversity of the human species, Washington Bird and Nature Alliance considers the work of inclusion, diversity, and equity a top priority moving forward. We hope that in doing so, we can bring creativity and energy to our work in Washtenaw County and beyond for birds and people alike. That's not the entire statement, but that's the first paragraph. And I'll just maybe go from there to state the obvious. Last month, we had a very exciting membership event and voted to change our name to reflect the more inclusive nature of the organization that we want to be. And so for that reason, we've changed our name to Washington Bird and Nature Alliance, and we're thrilled to see other former Audubon groups across the country in that same vein, making those same changes. Let's see. Let me highlight a few of the upcoming field trips that we have. First, this Saturday, Victor Chen will be leading our next BIPOC walk, and that will be starting off at Furstenberg on Saturday. We are now fully in migration season. We have our every Thursday morning 8 a.m. walks in the Arb to catch all the migrants that are coming through, and I saw more warblers are showing up even as we speak, so it's an exciting time of year. We will also be having our next restoration workday at Searles, the property we own in the county, and that's on April 27th, and I think Matt will be leading that workday effort. And then we, of course, have the May count coming up on May 11th, and we're always looking for volunteers as we try to count all the birds that we can find and see across the county. Let's see, in terms of programs, our next program after today will be on May 15th, again here in this facility, and Jaco Gelderloos will be sharing with us a presentation from his recent birding adventures in Guantanamo. So we're really looking forward to that. And then the program after that will be on June 19th. I think we're still locking down the presentation. So for both the field trips and the programs, you should always go to our website and you'll see the latest listings of all of our events. I'll also just say for everybody's awareness, not only do we have you all here in the library with us today, but we're also streaming live on a YouTube channel that the library hosts, and so we'll be monitoring the chat there as well. Let's see if there's any other business that I wanted to cover. I think I've covered it all, so let me then introduce our speaker for this evening. With us tonight is Len Sander and wife May. Maybe May, you're going to stay down, or you're going to come up? You're going to stay down. Len and May have been great members of this organization. They are avid birders. I know less about May. Len is Professor Emeritus at the U of M in the Department of Physics and Complex Systems. And we've had many chances before to see their adventures traveling and the photography that they do. So I couldn't be more thrilled to start our tenure here at the library with their photography, which I know will pop off this extraordinary screen above us. So with that, let me invite Len up to present tonight's program.
Thanks, Heath. May and I took a trip to Costa Rica this winter and took some photos, and I thought I'd share them with you. How many of you have been to Costa Rica? Okay. You undoubtedly recognize that phrase at the top of the screen. Pura vida? Yeah. I'm going to talk about that phrase. There's something about Costa Rica that's special and in some sense encapsulated in that phrase. Okay, so what we did is we went to a famous place. It's called Rancho Naturalista. Whoop, didn't mean to do that. How can I get that? There we go. Okay, Rancho Naturalista, and we stayed there for most of the trip. It's a remarkable place, and we saw some birds. Okay, and some other things which are interesting. So let me go on. Here, Costa Rica is a small country. It's about the size of West Virginia. It's not got very many people. It's got a lot of mountains. It's got a lot of habitats. It's a very good place to go birding. It has lots of birds, lots of biodiversity, remarkable number of species for a small country. 950 bird species in a place the size of West Virginia, which is kind of remarkable. I'm going to be talking about endemic birds or near-endemic birds, birds that are only found in Costa Rica. There are very few because it's so small. But if you count Costa Rica together with Panama, there are about 70 of them because, you know, they just go right across the border. And I'm going to talk about that. Any bird picture which has an asterisk by the name is a near-endemic. That is to say, a Middle American endemic. The country is very good for birding because it's got lots of wildlife refuges. And so let's see what a little bit more about the country. It's a Middle American country. Beautiful scenery, wonderful volcanoes and rainforests and beaches and lots of wildlife. These are not birds, bird wildlife, but you can see very, very interesting other stuff like that three-toed sloth, which we found in a city park, interestingly enough. So that's sort of what you would see in the generic tropical America. But there's something special about Costa Rica. Let me just, if you'll forgive me if I digress a bit and talk a little about Costa Rica as a country, because it's a very interesting country. It's sometimes called the Switzerland of Latin America. In the sense that it's unlike its neighbors. Latin America, Middle America in particular, is a very troubled place, as everyone knows. There are military coups, there are revolutions, there are all kinds of problems, including the fact that most of the countries in the region have been invaded by the United States. And that is not the case for Costa Rica. Costa Rica is very stable. It's been completely stable since 1949, when they got a new constitution. And they have not had any military coups, and they do that in a very elegant way. They have eliminated the military. The president at the time, named Figueres, who came into power by a military coup, decided to end that once and for all, and used the money that was saved for education and healthcare. And incredibly, he kept that promise, and as did his successors. So Costa Rica is a very highly educated country. It's a poor country compared to, us and Europe and so on. But it is very highly educated, has a remarkable social safety net, and it's very calm. It was once a banana republic, but the main export now is medical equipment, not bananas or coffee, as you might expect. I don't know if some of you may have seen in the New York Times a month ago, Costa Rica was referred to as the Silicon Valley of Latin America. Intel has a big factory there. So it's an interesting place, and it's been an interesting place for a long time. Even in Spanish colonial days, they were spared a lot of the horrors of colonialism because it's a nation of small farmers. They didn't have big latifundia, haciendas. They didn't have, the country is just not appropriate for that. And so having small independent farmers really helped them in nation building. And they are very aware of this. They refer to their lifestyle as, by this phrase, this doesn't show up, pura vida. Pura vida means good life, yeah? But it also can mean this is really cool. Or it can actually mean hello or goodbye as well. But it's something that they say. There's something that you hear in Costa Rican Spanish is this phrase. And it really, for me, exemplifies what we see there. Now, is it interesting to us as ecotourists? Well, I think it is. I think it is. It's the idea of their own country that the Costa Ricans have is worth talking about, worth thinking about. Okay, so what did we do? We went to San Jose and flew to San Jose, and then we stayed a couple of days near San Jose in a hotel. It's a nice hotel. It's sort of ordinary. It has a small, well, not so small garden. And in the garden, like the rest of Costa Rica, everything's packed in. There are a remarkable number of birds. But these are in some sense, the garden birds. And I'm going to talk about the garden birds. Garden birds, the birds you don't talk about on a bird walk here are downy woodpeckers, cardinals. If you point out a cardinal, people get mad at you, right? These are the birds you sort of don't see after a while, but they're actually quite nice. This is the social flycatcher is probably the bird we saw the most. It's a cool tyrant flycatcher. The tropical kingbird actually does occur in the Southwest in this country. This is the default owl, the mottled owl. We heard it most days, but in the garden, in a bamboo clump, we found it roosting during the day, and we were able to get a photo of it. Let me talk a little about this slide. On the right, you see our familiar birds who were there on vacation, as it were. But on the left is an example of a group which is really typical of tropical America, the tanagers, tropical tanagers. These are not the same as a scarlet tanager. It's a very large bird family, second largest bird family of all in number of species. And this guy up at the top, the blue-gray tanager, is something that you see all the time. It's a beautiful little bird, and there are an enormous number of birds like this that you'll see all over Costa Rica, and you'll see some of them as I go on. These are some wrens, which were sitting next to the swimming pool. It's kind of cool. This is the most common woodpecker. It looks sort of like a red-bellied woodpecker. I think it's in the same genus. It is, in fact, a near-endemic. You see its range here. It's in Costa Rica, and it gets into Nicaragua and up into Honduras a little bit, but that's all. But it's very common. It's very common within its range, and we saw it a lot. These guys are just hanging around. This crested caracara, which you can see in Texas and the South, and Arizona and places like that. Whoops. Keep doing that. Was sitting on a roof, and that hummingbird is the sort of most common hummingbird in the region. Believe it or not, these wonderful things are a common garden bird. Costa Ricans, suburbanites know this bird. It's always in the garden. There are a number of motmots, but this is the one that we saw a lot. This guy popped up in the garden one morning. This is the second owl. We saw 6 different species of owls in our trip. Okay, and this is a pygmy owl, somewhat like our pygmy owls, but a different species. And not all the birds in Costa Rica are brightly colored. The jays are duller than our jays, surprisingly. And this sparrow, the rufous-collared sparrow, is throughout Latin America, even down to Patagonia. This is a very common bird. Okay, so this is a bird. This is actually the most common bird. This one here, the most common bird we saw, is a very, very insignificant-looking bird. It looks like a robin painted brown. Okay, it used to be called the clay-colored robin, and it is the national bird of Costa Rica. Now, with all the wonderful birds in Costa Rica, why is this? Well, it says something about them. They'll tell you that it is the bird that announces the rainy season. That's when the farmers start to plant. If you hear this higuera singing, then it's time to plant. I don't know if that's true, but it is a national bird. And I'll let you contemplate the distinction between those two pictures for yourselves. Some beautiful doves. The white-winged dove, of course, you can find in the south in this country, but this red-billed pigeon, which we saw a lot, is a Central American bird. Okay, so that's the sort of the background, the sort of substrate of what we saw. Now, we started the tour at the hotel and looked around the hotel a little bit with our guides. These are our guides. Chris Benish works for Field Guides. Field Guides is an outfitter in Texas that I am brand loyal to. They're fantastic people. If you can get into their tours, they're always oversubscribed. Vernon Campos is a local, and he's a real wizard. I mean, it's just amazing what he could do, as you will see. So where did we go? We looked around the hotel a little bit, and then we went up. A lot of the things you're going to see are from the Costa Rican highlands. There's a string of highlands in central Costa Rica, which reaches down a little bit into western Panama. It has a name which I've forgotten. I have later in the slides. And a lot of the birds that you're going to see are actually endemic to that small range of mountains. Okay, so we went up to a volcano, which is really quite a tall mountain. There are lots of volcanoes in Costa Rica. So we went up to this volcano, Iratsu, and we started here. We went down along this road and then up a windy, I was trying to keep that as a surprise. Pretend you didn't see that. We went up to Iratsu, which is here, and later in the day, we went down to this town called Paraiso, and then to the hotel in Turrialba. Okay? So we went up the mountain and stopped halfway up, and we got out of the bus, and Chris looked up in a tree, and he said, "There's a quetzal in that tree." That was how hard it was for us to find the quetzal. We had been hearing stories from people who trekked through the rain, for hours and finally caught a little glimpse of it. There were 2 of these magnificent birds in that tree. Okay? This is an interesting guy. These long things are not actually tail feathers. They're tail coverts. They grow from the top of the tail. The actual tail feathers are these guys. This is the national bird of Guatemala, by the way. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to go back to Costa Rica. This is our 3rd trip to Costa Rica. We really like the place. So, but we had never seen the quetzal, and we did. Okay, so here's the other one, a little bit closer up, and free for nothing, sort of. Now, of course, at that stop, we just looked around, and there were birds everywhere. This is a high mountain bird, a kind of sparrow. I don't know where that strange name comes from, but there it is. This is another endemic. And this is an endemic in that region that I talked about. This mountain range, Irasu is here, yeah? And this mountain range just pokes into Panama. But it's full of endemic birds, endemic to those highlands, to the central highlands. And that's a lot of what we saw, and some of the most interesting things we saw. So this beautiful warbler, it's a wood warbler. It's just there on the mountain. Now, this is something that, as a, I was an academic for so long, I can't help but do this kind of thing. Why is there so much biodiversity in the tropics in a place like that? Yeah? That's not a very big place. If you go to the Arctic, for example, you can see places with far more birds. I think many of you have seen this, rookeries with 1 million birds in the Arctic, but they're all the same species. Here, everything's different. Now, where that biodiversity comes from has puzzled me for a long time. So I asked experts at the university and elsewhere, and all the answers I got were totally unsatisfactory. The best one I got is that this is a stable environment. They've never had an ice age there, yeah? So maybe the theory of evolution leads to complexity. Speciation is just something that goes one way, and if you don't get wiped out, then you have it. I don't understand why speciation goes one way, because there's also extinction, but never mind. I will not burden you with my speculations. Okay, this is another endemic, this hummingbird, which was nesting, yeah, in January, or actually December, is endemic to that same ridge of mountains that I talked about. This thrush should have an asterisk. It is also endemic to that area. It's a very elegant looking bird. This finch is not a finch. This is a sparrow, a large sparrow, but it is also an endemic. This beautiful little guy, nightingale thrush, is endemic to that area. And that's a junco. That's their junco. It's not like any other junco, though it does look like the yellow-eyed junco of the Southwest, but it isn't. And this guy I really like. Flower piercers are a kind of tanager. They are unique in that, unlike most birds which reach into a flower to get the nectar, they bite the end of the flower to get the nectar. And then you can see the specialized hook beak that they have for doing that. And a nice little flycatcher, also endemic to this region. So there's this sort of explosion of species in this little region, and we'll see more later of these highland birds. Okay, so we saw lots of other things up there, which I will skip. We went down the mountain, and Vernon told the bus driver to go to the town of Paraiso, which is a medium-sized town, about the size of, maybe smaller than Ann Arbor, to the city park. Okay, there were kids playing in the park. You see the swings, you see the kids. And we said, Vernon, what are you up to? You don't go birding, it's like birding in Burns Park. What is this? Well, he knew what he's doing. He always did. He took us to that tree, for example. If you look across the street, we found these guys. There was also a barn owl in that tree. Okay, so this is, what is it, 4 owls now? Okay. These endemic parakeets were in the palm trees above the swing set. And in that same palm tree was that three-toed sloth I showed you. Okay. The people are living with with wildlife in a very, very cheek by jowl. And now, there are real endemics in Costa Rica, like this guy, the Costa Rican ground sparrow, or the Cabinas ground sparrow, which we looked for and didn't. We didn't find it. But we did find this, which is a 6-foot-high statue of the bird, which I found amusing. And actually, this plaque is very interesting. This plaque, I'll translate a bit of it for you. Sorry. Let me, I'm going to sort of look at this part, which says something like, this bird was declared the symbol of the canton of Paraiso in 2022. The donation of this sculpture invites the observer to think about the importance of the coexistence of biodiversity, natural beauty, and the cultural identity that we all share. Now, that's a kind of an interesting thing to be in a city park, and it's interesting. It's, again, the value that these people put on their environment. I believe it to be real. I'm a tourist. I haven't been there very much, but I believe it to be real, and I believe it to be significant for this country. Okay, then we went to the hotel. The hotel is a hotel. It's a nice hotel out in the country, up a steep road near the town of Turrialba. It's not terribly big, maybe 20 rooms, something like that. But it's very famous. It's been a birder destination since 1980. And it's got good food. This is our room, right here. This is me. And that doorway leads out to a terrace, a balcony. And the balcony is the most famous place, one of the most famous places for birders in Costa Rica. From that balcony, there have been 220 species identified. Okay? It is an absolutely remarkable place, and we were lucky enough to have the room sitting open to the balcony. So may we get up in the morning before dawn and go out and get some coffee and wait for the birds. I would get up a little later, and we would bird the balcony. So what's the birding the balcony like? It's very energetic. This is how you bird the balcony. You get your coffee, as you see. It's always there. It's good coffee. Costa Rican coffee, huh? And then you wait. You don't actually have to wait very long before you see some really interesting things. The first thing to show up in the morning usually are these guys, chachalacas, birds this big, yeah? A flock of them would come. This is the gray-headed chocolate chachalaca. It's not the same one that comes into Texas, but a related bird. There are some sparrows that were on the ground underneath the feeder, some cute little sparrows. Two different kinds of toucan came in. This is the aracari, you already saw that picture. And the other one is the big keel-billed toucan. We're going to see another toucan later. This is another tanager. This is scarlet-rumped tanager. This is our kind of tanager, there for the winter. This is an American bird, a North American bird. But the most interesting thing, at least for me, comes later. These are two more tanagers, which have a sort of fascinating diversity in this big group. These are blackbirds. This is a typical blackbird. This melodious blackbird is a typical sort of blackbird. This Oropendula is a big bird, yeah, but it is a blackbird, an icterid blackbird, and there's another one, slightly smaller, that we also saw, and I'll show you a picture of it later. Oropendula are very interesting birds. They make these wonderful hanging nests, woven hanging nests that you can see a lot in the rainforest. But this is, to my mind, the stars of the show. That guy on there, I'll show you a better picture later, is a honeycreeper, red-legged honeycreeper. But what we're seeing is the hummingbird feeders. That's a hummingbird that befriended my wife. He sat about, 4 feet from you, and they communed with each other for about 10 minutes. I don't know what they had to say, but this is what it looks like. That is not atypical, the amount of activity you see on the balcony. Yeah? Here are some of the hummingbirds we saw. We saw a lot of hummingbirds. This is a beautiful violet-headed hummingbird, the plumeteer. You can identify by its red legs. Somehow I decided this is my favorite bird of the trip. This beautiful little guy. You can always see that gorgeous gorget, the green gorget, and this wood nymph. By the way, this is from the balcony. The balcony not only has feeders, but it also has flowering bushes that the hummingbirds are attracted to. Not only birds. Anyone who's been in Central America knows the coatis. Actually, they come into Texas, don't they? I think so. Anyway, they're related to the raccoon, and the agouti is a giant rodent. Don't think rat, rodent. Okay, it's this big. And they're all over the place in this region. So we didn't sit on the balcony all the time. We could have, it would have been fun, but we actually got up and walked within the grounds of the hotel. Now, I already mentioned the grounds of the hotel are not very big. They're, what did I say, 100 acres or something like that. Half the birds of Costa Rica have been sighted in the hotel grounds. Sort of pretty remarkable. We walked down the hill about 5 minutes and found another trogon. The quetzal is a kind of trogon, and this is a somewhat less fancy trogon, but it is a very elegant bird, a very beautiful bird. There's another wood warbler, which is characteristic of the region. Tree creepers, I'm fascinated by tree creepers. They're like a giant brown creeper. They're not related. The tree creepers and the wood creepers are, and the tree creepers, which is our brown creeper, and wood creepers are unrelated, but they have similar habits. They walk up and down trees and find insects. And there are, I think we saw 4 or 5 different kinds. I'll show you a couple pictures of them. Here's this splendid little flycatcher is a tiny bird, smaller than a kinglet, and very bold, actually. One of the gorgeous tropical tanagers, which is one of many very, very beautiful tanagers. We didn't see so many this trip. On our previous trips, we saw, I don't know, a dozen different kinds of tanagers, one more beautiful than the other. In some sense, more varied and more beautiful than warblers, than our wood warblers. And then there was another target bird, another endemic, which is very much a specialty of Rancho Naturalista. You can, it's one of the best places to see this snowcap, which is a bronze-colored hummingbird of all things, and we saw it quite well. Here's another picture of it. It's a very beautiful bird. And we did leave the hotel. Okay, we walked around. We moved, in the area in Cartago province. We would go for maybe 20-minute drives and find other things. And these are interesting birds that we found. Another wood creeper. This gray-headed flycatcher is a Central American specialty, but not particularly. It also goes into Mexico, I think. A version of our peewee. The bacards are a big group of bacards and titras are a big group of tropical birds, which we don't have anything like that here. And this one is all over South America. This is what birding was like. I mean, we were not going on hikes. We were getting out of the bus, and the birds were all over the place. It's at once very easy to see birds and very frustrating for a photographer because there's a lot of vegetation and the birds are in the vegetation. Birding in a rainforest, birding in a forest like this is difficult if you want to get photos. But we managed some, as you see. We went along streams, and we saw this. I sort of think of Jimmy Durante or something, but this sort of incredible kingfisher. This is another nesting hummingbird. We saw the males of this hummingbird at the rancho, but I like this picture of the female on a telephone pole. Casa Terreri is a hotel. So we went to the hotel grounds, walked around. There was an open field. These plovers, southern lapwings, are all over South America, all the way down to Patagonia. And they sort of play the role of killdeer, I guess. The meadow, everything in Costa Rica is brightly colored. This is the meadowlark. Huh? A version of yellowthroat, not the same as ours. This one very occasionally gets into the United States, but mostly in tropical America. Another kind of pigeon. There are lots of pigeons. Pigeons, doves are all over the place. This is a wonderful little bird. I don't know if it only hangs out on mistletoe, but it is a flycatcher, a small flycatcher, and we saw them pretty much. It's a central and northern South American bird. We spend a lot of time hanging out on streams, and I'll tell you why in a minute. We saw wonderful things in the streams. This is a striated tiger heron. There was another tiger heron we saw later, and another kingfisher. It's the second kingfisher. We saw a total of 4 kingfishers. I'll show you 3 of them. La Mina is this area, the area where we saw it. Now, what were we looking for along the streams? We were looking for this guy. This is definitely one of my target birds. This is called a sunbittern. Sunbitterns are very strange birds. You don't see it here, but when they open their wings, the top of the wings is like a moth, with big eyes, yeah? And they use that when they're threatened. They open their wings and suddenly you see this big, flashing pattern. And we didn't threaten them, so we didn't see it, yeah? But this is the 4th time I've looked for the sunbittern and finally found it. But they're all over the place. This is mislabeled. This was also at La Mina, where we saw it. But we saw it within the town of Turrialba. We stopped on a city street and looked on a bridge, and we saw one flying, actually, nesting in that area. So they're actually pretty common in this area. What's special about them is that they are unique in their family. There's only one bird in the family, a sunbird. The only distant relative they have is called the kagu. The kagu lives in New Caledonia in the South Pacific. It also has the same wing display. Now, how do birds in the South Pacific and birds in Costa Rica get together? Well, the notion is that these are birds that are what they call a Gondwanaland lineage. That is to say, the lineage formed when there was a supercontinent, and which broke up and spread apart. That was 180 million years ago. So this is a very, very old lineage. We went to a college campus. There are actually a lot of colleges in Costa Rica. A lot of educated people, in fact. This is an agricultural college. The ant shrikes are a member of the antbird family. Antbirds are birds that are specialized in the right season. We didn't see this. To follow the army ants. Army ants go through the forest floor, kick up a lot of, scare up a lot of insects, which then birds come in and take over. The ant shrike does that. Another of these beautiful little flycatchers, also very, very small. I think all of us know the northern parula. This is the other parula, or parula, depending on how you say it. The great putu it's a bit hard to make out. This was roosting in a tree. That's its beak. It's a night bird, big night bird, and we located it in the trees on the campus. There's a lake, and in the lake, there's these things that are called cicadas. They belong to a group of birds called lily trotters, and appropriately, he is on a lily. Look at the feet are just amazing. Yeah. We're at the lake. We saw other things like these comical-looking herons. There are a bunch of them. There are other herons with them, the more familiar thing, cattle egrets and great egrets, and snowy egrets. But I thought these were interesting to take pictures of. Here's another kind of night heron, tiger heron, another kind of tiger heron, related to the one we saw before. There are more than that. I've seen a third one in Panama, but in this group of tiger herons. We are, again, in the vicinity of the hotel. We saw, we were just driving around and stopped. This is a very common falcon, very beautiful bird, sitting in a tree, perfectly happy to let us take pictures of it. That woodpecker is, of course, related to the pileated. It's a big group of birds sort of like that all over the Americas. So at a certain point, we decided to go back to high altitudes. And the reason is that we're going into what's known in Costa Rica as the cloud forest. At higher altitudes than the hotel. Hotel's at 3,000 feet, maybe starting at 4,000, 5,000 feet. You get into the cloud forest where there's a lot of clouds, a lot of mist, and very special birds which are in that habitat. Well, as you may have noticed, we had gorgeous weather. We had no rain. The people, we talked to people who were on a tour the week before us, and they were rained on every day. We had wonderful weather. The problem with that is cloud forest birds like clouds, and when it's like that, you don't actually see very much. But we did manage to see a little. In fact, we scared up 2 more endemics. Barbets are sort of tropical America's specialty. The black-bellied hummingbird is also, these are endemics to that same region. You see the range map over here, it's the same region that I've been talking about, the Costa Rican highlands. Now, that was all around the hotel, very close to the hotel, within 20, 30 miles of the hotel that we did all that birding. The only long trip we took was to a rather strange place in Limon province, down by the Caribbean. And it's called Donde Cope. Cope is the nickname of this guy, what's his name? Jose Perez, who converted a house to a wildlife refuge, literally a house. I mean, his property is smaller than this building, yeah? But he made a fantastic wildlife refuge just sort of in his backyard. And people come from all over the place to see it. He also has, there's also a nearby rainforest, which I'll also tell you about, which we went to. Okay, so here's Cope. I think that's actually him putting things out for the birds. And what do we see there? Well, let's see. That guy on the left is the other Oropendola. Okay? These are nice feeder birds, huh? And here's another one. I would like that in my backyard. And here are the Oropendolas coming back. Here is that honey creeper sitting on a feeder. This hummingbird was sort of sitting. We're standing on a balcony, of course, standing to look over into the garden, a small garden, and there was a little branch above, and it was about 4 feet above me. It's a scaly-breasted hummingbird. Here's another hummingbird, which I kind of like. It's rather common in tropical America, but it's a beautiful thing anyway. It's this long-billed hermit. Sorry about that. I'm not a very good videographer. There was a rail that came out of the garden in the forest, just in the little woods. This is the 3rd kingfisher I've shown you. And we saw the big kingfisher, the belted kingfisher, but I didn't get a photo of it. So there are 4 kingfishers total. Another toucan. Different kind of parakeet. So then we went into the rainforest because nearby, maybe 10-minute drive from, and Cope has the people who take you into the rainforest. we decided to go into the rainforest. Okay, now, how many of you have ever walked in a rainforest? You know it's not always easy going, right? Well, it was not easy going at all here. Fortunately, they lent us boots, yeah? When we got out, all of us were pretty dirty. I claim I was the dirtiest, but other people might have contested that. So what did we see? We went into the rainforest and we saw some pretty remarkable things. Now, in the rainforest, you don't see very far, and there's not much light. So you've got to sort of be careful how you look at things. But we did see this wonderful owl. How many owls is that now? 5, I think, yeah. Okay. That's not a bird, but it sure is an amazing thing. That's a banana leaf. These things are about that big. Those are bats. Okay? So the guide somehow knew which banana leaf to pull open, and there are these wonderful, wonderful little Honduran white bats. And 2 more owls. This crested owl is not all that common. The black and white owl, I've never seen an owl marked like that. That is just astonishing. Okay. So that was our expedition to the Caribbean lowlands, the area near the Caribbean in Limón province. Now, I have to say something. I've been talking about Costa Rica because I got interested in Costa Rica. After we went there, I started reading about Costa Rica, thinking, sort of seeing, oddly enough, articles about Costa Rica because it's a rather small country. And one of them is rather disturbing because I've been painting it as a kind of paradise, and I think in some sense it is. But something happened in the last decade. Costa Rica had a very low crime rate, and in the last decade it has skyrocketed. And the reason is that the cocaine traffickers had decided to move into Central America as a transshipment point, and they considered, as you might imagine, Costa Rica as a soft target. Yeah? The peaceful country, well, anyway. So Limón province is a place where they had moved in, and they fight with each other, and they murder each other. So there are gang wars in Limón province. Now, that's also true elsewhere in Central America as well. The traffickers also moved into El Salvador. El Salvador is different from Costa Rica. The president promptly suspended the Constitution, and they started with a high crime rate, and now they have the highest incarceration rate. They threw a lot of people in jail. Now, Costa Ricans don't like that. That's not their thing. Huh? So according to articles I've read in The Economist and elsewhere, there is a national debate going on. What do we do? Do we do this brutal crackdown stuff? What do we do in a situation like that? It's an interesting thing, and I hope they resolve it. By the way, as tourists, we didn't see anything like that. For us, it was pura vida all the way, right? But it's there. It's real. Where am I? Okay, we went back to the rancho, and back at the rancho, one more thing I want to show you. One more thing I want to show you is something they call the hummingbird pools. There's behind the lodge, maybe 100 yards, there's a ravine, and at the bottom of the ravine there's some freshwater pools, and they built a deck, as you see here, to overlook that. And you go in the evening. Now, it's rather difficult for photography because the light is terrible, but we were able to see some wonderful birds there. I mean, which I didn't photograph, I tried. Golden-winged warblers and worm-eating warblers and antbirds, lots of things which I saw but didn't photograph. But also, I saw my favorite bird, again, doing this. I'd never seen a hummingbird do that. Okay, so let me wrap up. We spent a week, basically a week in Costa Rica. We didn't go very far. We spent it in a small area. However, if you count all the species heard and seen by all the 14 members of the group, right, there are 276 species. Yeah? I didn't see them all. I did see, and I sort of checked, over 200 species myself. Of course, you can't photograph all the species you see. I didn't show you all my photographs either, but anyway, all our photographs. But we did have a pretty good time. This is our third trip, and I think we're going to go back. I really, really like the place. If you want more photos, May has a blog in which she has lots of stuff about Costa Rica. There's a search box. You search for Costa Rica. And I have a Flickr account where if you look in the albums, there's an album about Costa Rica. Actually, there's an album about all of our 3 trips, if you look through, but with other birds in Costa Rica. Field guides, birding tours arranged our trip. And again, as I say, I sort of am brand loyal to them. I think they're the greatest. Of course, there are other outfitters, but that's what I do. Thank you for your attention. Okay, Matt is going to take questions.
Is there any questions? So for the YouTube audience, they're a little bit behind us, but when they catch up to this part, again, I put in the chat. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat and I'll share it with Len. Is there any questions here? Here you go.
Wondering, with the 3 times, were they all the same time of year? Did you go at different times? And what would you recommend?
What times of year did we go? We went basically during the winter and spring. The other times were a little bit later in the year. This is the only time we went right at New Year's. Any time is good. The rainy season starts later. Right? It rains all the time. But it rains a lot more later, but you can see other birds.
Yes, we got a question back here.
You plan on going to Belize?
I didn't hear the question.
Do you plan on going to Belize? Is the question.
I've never been to Belize, and yeah. It's one of the places I've been thinking of going, sure. I understand it's a little different, of course. It isn't that highlands kind of thing, but the same kind of biodiversity is what I understand you see there. Yeah.
As folks are thinking, I had a question. What was your favorite song or bird call that you heard? Or 5?
They were not singing very much.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's the winter. So, I don't know.
I think I missed it, but did you show, I stepped out for just a second, did you show the Orapendola doing its?
The Orapendola.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite. They really put their whole body into it.
Okay. Okay, so that on the left is a chestnut-headed Orapendola. That's a Montezuma on the right. Chestnut-headed is a little bit smaller, and that, of course, is an Arsari.
Yeah, when they do their song and they're standing in their nesting colony, they kind of get it all together and they almost tip over by the time they let out their scream. It's really fun.
But not in the season.
Okay.
They were not.
I've got a question from YouTube from Michael Franklin. What's the most interesting birding behavior you observed?
That's interesting. I think watching those birds at the pools was something I'd never seen that before, and I wish I could, I wish I had more light or something, but just so I could convey it. But they were just coming in and sort of, moving around. It was a really fantastic thing.
Keith has a question.
Actually, two questions, Len. I'll pile on. One, did you see any mannequins?
We did see mannequins, yes. We saw 2 or 3 kinds of mannequins. They were elusive, but yes, indeed.
Yeah, the only mannequin I've been able to photograph required crawling on my belly for quite a while.
I'm sorry.
No, that was a comment. My other question for you, for the whole group, though, is can you remind us what kind of camera equipment you and May use?
Okay, May uses a super zoom Canon SX70. I use a mirrorless OM Systems, it used to be Olympus, with 100 to 400 telephoto.
I do the not bird pictures, the ones with the buildings and the balcony and all that. Some of them are taken with the iPhone.
Actually, some of those bird pictures are definitely May's.
Other questions? Oh, here we go. Hi.
Thank you. When we traveled to Hawaii, we saw many of the honey creepers and so on who had evolved bills that would fit into one particular species of flower.
Yeah.
And so as I'm seeing your pictures here of the araceli and the toucans, can you say anything about why their bills have developed in that
Why
way?
they're so big. I read about that. I read that somewhere, and I can't remember. People do have ideas about why that is. The bills are very light, actually, even though they're very large. But I'm sorry, I can't remember why. The other, that long-billed hermit with the very curved bill, the hummingbirds typically have bills evolved for particular flowers, and that hermit certainly has that bill.
Other questions? You talked a little bit about what I found interesting when I looked at Costa Rica birding was I was used to looking at range maps in the United States, which is east, west, north, south. In Costa Rica, it's more up, down, right?
Up, down.
Which I thought was so cool. Like you look at these range maps and there's little circles, like a topographic map, is kind of what the range maps look like, which is interesting.
I think it's called Talamancan Range, the highlands.
Yeah.
Actually, it's reminiscent of southeast Arizona, where you have these islands, right, of high up, and people and birds jump from island to island. So Iratsu has the same kinds of birds but it's disjoint from the mountain range, but it's not very far. And the whole highlands region is really very small. But it's incredible diversity. Just an explosion of diversity there, which I didn't know anything about before I went.
Any other questions? Going once? Somebody's like, I'm not going to do it, but I want to. Who is it? Nobody? Okay. Well, Len, thank you very much for being our first speaker at the library. We love this partnership. Give it up for Len. Thank you. And we hope to see you next month and at any of other of our events. And just to remind everyone, everyone is welcome to join us at all of our events. For 99% of our events, you do not need to be a member. Of course, we appreciate it. And anyone can come. We always have extra binoculars. And if you need any special accommodations at any of our events, please reach out. We'd be happy to do so. So thanks again, Len. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.